I remember the smell of the vanilla cake Mom had baked that morning. She never baked, not even on holidays, but on my 18th birthday, she did. I should have known something was wrong there. They waited until the afternoon. I was still in my pajamas when Dad called me into the living room. He didn't even look at me. Mom was staring at her lap, her lips tight. Something had happened. I could feel it in my gut. "Sit down," Dad said. His voice had that same cold edge he'd used when I'd spilled milk as a toddler. I sat there, confused but trying to stay calm. I'd learned long ago not to show emotion around them. It made things worse. Then they dropped the bombshell. "You were adopted," Mom said dryly. "No emotion, no tears, just facts. We took you in when you were 2, Dad added. Your birth mother couldn't take care of you. We did what we could." I was paralyzed. "We think it's time," Mom continued, "for you to go your own way now. You're old enough." Then Dad reached under the couch and slid a small canvas backpack across the carpet. "There's some money in there and some clothes. We've arranged for you to stay in a shelter until you find a job." They were kicking me out on my birthday. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I stood up slowly and nodded. "Thank you," I said with a small smile. They didn't notice the way my fingers tightened on the backpack strap. They didn't notice the glint of something sharper in my eyes. Because what they didn't know, what they could never have guessed, was that 3 weeks earlier I had found the letter. It had been buried in the bottom drawer of the hall closet, behind some old tax papers. An envelope addressed to a woman named Dora Vance, but inside was a birth certificate with my name and hers listed as the mother. No father. I had looked her up online. I even went to the library to read old newspaper articles, and what I found shocked me so deeply that I hadn't spoken about it to anyone. Not yet. My birth mother wasn't unfit. She was taken. And now, as I walked out the front door of the house where I'd lived all my life, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt ready. Because I wasn't leaving in shame. I was leaving with a plan. The hostel smelled of bleach and stale air, the kind of place people ended up when they had nowhere else to go. That first night, I kept my back against the wall, clutching my backpack like it was worth something. The truth was, it only had 2 changes of clothes, a few crumpled bills, and that envelope. The envelope was everything. The next morning, I left before dawn, the air sharp against my cheeks. I walked the hour to the public library, my only real refuge. It was quiet there, safe, and they had the archives. I sat at the microfilm station, slid on the reel light hidden in my closet last week, and kept reading the same yellowed article over and over, as if this time the ending would change. Local psychiatrist Dora Vance, institutionalized after whistleblower claims go wrong. The photo next to the headline showed a young woman with dark eyes and delicate features being led away in handcuffs. Her expression was not fear, it was defiance. The article said she had accused a local doctor, Dr. Brian Kellner, of unethical experimentation on female patients at a now-defunct clinic. The doctor denied everything, of course. A month later, Dora was declared unstable and sent to Serene Psychiatric for treatment and observation. No charges were filed against the doctor, no follow-up, just silence. Except that the same doctor later became the head of the Kellner Health Institute, a foundation to which my adoptive father donated frequently. I remembered seeing the name on letters around the house, purported to be charity work. Now it was starting to click. I printed out the article and put it in the envelope. The librarian looked at me strangely, perhaps because my hands were shaking. Back at the hostel, I opened my notebook and wrote down everything I knew. Dora was a practicing psychiatrist. She had been institutionalized after trying to expose a powerful man. She had given birth to me during that time. Somehow, I had ended up in the care of a couple connected to that same man. This was no coincidence. That night, I couldn't sleep. The shadows on the ceiling seemed too vivid. Too close. I kept thinking about her. Dora, did she know I was here? Was she even alive? I needed answers. I needed to see her, talk to her if I could. But first, I had to find out where Serene Psychiatric was now, if it even existed. The next morning, I started calling public records offices, mental health departments, anyone who might know where previous patients had been transferred after Serene Psychiatric closed. Most of them didn't even know it existed, but one clerk, An older woman with a soft voice hesitated when I asked. She said she'd call me back. 2 hours later, she called. There's a long-term care facility in Glenridge, about 3 hours north. Some of the patients from Serene Psychiatric were quietly transferred there in the late 90s. There's no public list, but I can tell you that some of them are still there. I didn't ask how she knew. I just wrote down the name, Horizon Care Center. I had a destination now, but no car, no money, and no idea what I would find. I hadn't eaten in a day, not because I couldn't, but because I couldn't afford it. The crumpled bills my foster parents had given me had almost been used up on shelter fees and registration paperwork. Every coin mattered now, even the ones stuck in the bottom of the vending machines. I sat on the sidewalk near the library with my notebook on my lap, trying to calculate. The bus fare to Glenridge wasn't much, but it might as well have been a plane ticket with what I had. I didn't want to steal, I didn't want to beg, but I wanted answers. The diner across the street had a wanted sign in the window. I hesitated, then went through. I asked for the manager, said I'd wash dishes, mop floors, anything. He looked me up and down, noticed the dark circles under my eyes, and said, "You start tomorrow, 6 a.m. I worked 5 days straight, barely speaking to anyone. My back ached. My hands bled from the scalding water and cracked soap, but on the 6th morning, I pocketed $117 in tips and pay. It was enough. The bus to Glenridge left at 10:40 a.m. I didn't say goodbye to anyone, just walked to the terminal, tucked the envelope with Dora's article into my jacket, and boarded. The ride was silent, passing through towns that looked almost abandoned, their streets still frosted even though it was April. Horizon Care Center sat at the top of a long hill, half hidden by trees. The sign was faded, the paint peeling. It looked less like a hospital and more like a forgotten mansion. The woman at the front desk barely looked up when I walked in. She had a clipboard, glasses perched on the bridge of her nose, and a tired voice. "I'm here to visit a patient," I said, steadying my voice. "Name?" she asked. "Dora Vance." She blinked. "Relationship?" I hesitated. "I'm her daughter." She looked up, studying me for a moment. "She doesn't have visitors." "I know, that's why I'm here." She picked up the phone, dialed an internal line, muttered something too low to hear, then waved me over. "Down the hall, second door on the left, but be quick." The door creaked open, like something out of a dream, and there she was. Thin, pale, with thinning hair streaked with gray, sitting near a window, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She didn't turn when I entered. "Dora," I said, my voice shaking now. She looked up slowly, her eyes meeting mine, and for a second, just a second, something flashed in them. Recognition, pain, maybe both. She didn't speak, but she didn't look away either. I took a step closer, my heart hammering. "My name is Rachel. You had a daughter 18 years ago. They told me you were unfit. They told me you were dangerous, but I read what happened. I know what you tried to do. I know what they did to you." She exhaled softly, and something in her posture changed. Her hands clenched. "They still watch me," she whispered, barely audible. "They think I don't remember, but I do." I froze. She remembered. But who were they? Dora's eyes darted to the door, then to the corners of the ceiling. There were no cameras that I could see, but she stared as if she knew exactly where they used to be. Her voice was barely above a whisper when she spoke again. "They recorded our therapy sessions. They said it was for research, but it wasn't. It was to control us, to build profiles. I saw things, heard things that I shouldn't have." She paused, gripping her thin wrist with her opposite hand, as if to restrain herself. "Dora," I began, taking a step closer. "Who are they? Is it the Kellner Institute?" She blinked rapidly, the name seeming to cause a physical reaction in her. She shook her head slowly, but not in a no, more in a fearful denial. "Your father," she whispered, her eyes not meeting mine. "He shouldn't have adopted you. He wasn't even on the approved list, but he pulled strings, had his file closed, sealed." I tried to stop him, but by then they had decided I was too loud, too dangerous. My knees went weak. I sank into the chair next to her, trying to keep my voice steady. "What were they doing, Dora? What did Kellner do to those women?" She bit her lip until it went white. Experimental therapy, isolation techniques, memory suppression tests. It started under the guise of PTSD treatments, but it evolved. They tested drugs, behavioral manipulation on women no one would miss. Some were addicts, some were just inconvenient wives. And you? I asked. I was documenting everything. I was young, idealistic. I thought ethics mattered. I sent a report to the state board. A week later I was suspended, then arrested, then this place. Her voice broke and her eyes filled with tears. She hadn't cried in years, I could tell. She'd trained herself not to cry. I begged them to let me see you when they told me you'd been placed in a group home. I didn't know where or with whom. They moved me here, said I was a danger to myself. I've never stopped wondering. I reached into my bag and pulled out the envelope. You don't have to wonder anymore. She fingered the folded papers as if they might dissolve in her fingers. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, you shouldn't be here. If they know you found me, I don't care, I interrupted firmer now. You're not crazy. You never were, and I'm going to prove it. Dora's hand shot out, gripping mine with sudden force. Don't trust anyone with a badge or a lab coat. Not in this world. Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the hallway. Dora's whole body stiffened. A shadow passed through the doorway. She straightened, her eyes blank, her posture perfect. The nurse opened the door, smiling thinly. I'm sorry, visiting hours are over. Dora didn't look at me again, just folded her hands and turned toward the window. I stood, my heart racing, and as I passed the nurse, she leaned in slightly and whispered, You're not the first to ask about her, but the last girl didn't come back. She closed the door behind me before I could respond. The cold hit me like a slap the moment I stepped out of Horizon Care Center. My breath fogged the air, and my fingertips trembled, not just from the cold, but from everything I'd just heard. My mother wasn't a patient. She was a prisoner. I didn't go straight to the bus stop. I found a bench under a dead oak tree and sat there, staring at the faded center sign at the top of the hill. My thoughts were racing. Another girl had come before me. Someone else had tried to find out the truth, and she was gone. The nurse hadn't meant it as a threat, but it sounded like one. Back in Glenridge, I checked into a cheap hotel with cracked wallpaper and a key that barely turned. I couldn't sleep. I spent the night scouring online forums, deep archives, even Reddit threads, looking for anything about Horizon Care Center, Serene Psychiatric, or patients who disappeared without a trace. Nothing. It was as if they'd erased their history completely. I turned my attention to the Kellner Foundation. That name had haunted me ever since I'd seen it on the donation letters in my foster father's office. Their website was impeccable, full of smiling faces, wellness retreats, and carefully worded mission statements about holistic healing for women in crisis. A lie, a facade. I started digging through nonprofit files and tax documents, anything public. And then I saw it. A name buried in the administrative paperwork. George Smith. He had signed off on a foundation acquisition of patient care research materials during the year Serene Psychiatric was closed. My stomach dropped, because that was my adoptive father's real name. He was never just a donor, he was part of it, a director, one of the inner circle. He helped Kellner cover it all up. He may have even helped get Dora committed. And then he got me. I was never a gift, never a charity case. I was a reminder of their success, proof that the system worked, that they could destroy someone's life and raise their child as if nothing had happened. Anger shook my body, but beneath it, a cold fear crept. They had power reach. They had erased others before. That nurse at Horizon Care Center wasn't warning me out of kindness. She was telling me to run. But I wasn't going to run. I needed proof. I searched the government records for Horizon Care Center and found a name, Nurse Nora Silva, the same one I'd seen on the tag. With some effort, I tracked down her Facebook page. No posts, just likes and pictures of her cat. But there was a clue. An old comment under a photo from a nursing conference. Someone had tagged her and said, "Still working nights at Horizon Care Center?" Poor thing, that place is a haunted house. I texted her. I didn't expect a response, but I told her who I was, that I'd spoken to Dora and that I needed her help to expose what really happened. An hour passed, then two. Then, at 1:30 a.m., a text arrived, "Meet me at the back entrance tomorrow night, midnight. But if anyone sees you, tell me you're lost." The wind was bitter that night, cutting through my jacket as if it weren't there. Midnight at Horizon Care Center felt different, as if the building itself were holding its breath. There were no cars in the parking lot, no voices, just silence and shadows lengthening in the moonlight. I followed the gravel path around the back, stepping over cracked stones and patches of frost. The door was marked maintenance only. It creaked open before I could knock. Nora Silva was inside, still in her uniform, her expression tense and tired. Up close, she looked older than I'd expected, not in years but in waiting, as if she'd been carrying too many secrets for too long. "You came," she said. I nodded. I needed to. She waved me in. "Keep your voice down. Some of the cameras are broken, but not all." We moved quickly down a narrow service hallway lit by flickering bulbs. She led me through a small break room and into an old file room lined with filing cabinets. "I shouldn't be doing this," she whispered, unlocking the third drawer from the bottom with a small brass key, "but I saw what they did to your mother and the others. And when that last girl showed up, I thought maybe, just maybe, someone would finally listen." I froze. "The other girl? What happened to her?" Nora pulled a thick file out of her filing cabinet and handed it to me. Her name was Jane Gordon. A journalism student. Brilliant. Persistent. She came to ask questions about Dora and others who disappeared from Serene Psychiatric. She showed me court documents she'd dug up, medical papers. She was close. What happened to her? She came back for a second visit. That night her dorm room was broken into, her laptop and files gone. She told her roommate she felt like she was being followed. 2 days later, she disappeared. The police ruled it a voluntary disappearance, but you don't believe that. "No," Nora said softly. Jane was scared, but not the kind to run away. I opened Dora's file. Pages and pages of notes, all stamped unfit, delusional, paranoid in red. The language was clinical, cold, manipulative. "She wasn't delusional," Nora said. She was sane. The day before she was admitted, she filed a complaint with the medical board. The next day, she was labeled a threat. I turned to a photocopied, handwritten report signed D. Vance. It described unauthorized drug testing on patients without legal consent, under Kellener's direction. "Why hasn't this been reported?" Nora shook her head. "The Foundation's reach is far and wide. They fund hospitals, universities, even political campaigns. If you try to go through the system, they'll make you disappear too." "I'm not going through the system," I said, folding the report and tucking it into my jacket. "I'll burn their house down from the inside out." Nora hesitated, then reached into her own bag and handed me a flash drive. "These are internal memos, scans of patient records, Dora's reports. If you're serious, you're going to need this." "I am." "Then be smart and don't come back here." As I walked out the maintenance door, I realized something had changed. I was no longer just a girl looking for answers. I was a threat, and I wasn't scared. Not yet. I didn't go back to the hotel. I didn't go anywhere under my name. Instead, I spent the night in a corner of an all-night diner in another city, drinking a cup of coffee I couldn't afford and staring at the flash drive in my palm like it was a live wire. I didn't have a laptop, just my phone. I couldn't risk connecting the drive to anything traceable. At noon, I found a secondhand electronics store, paid cash for a battered Chromebook. I took it to a public library, sat in the back, behind a shelf of forgotten biographies, and plugged in the flash drive. It took 3 minutes to load, then the folder names appeared: patient records, experimental treatment notes, foundation memos, Dr. BK, private, transfer records, D. Vance. My throat went dry. I opened patient records first. Pages of cold clinical notes, coded references to sedation trials, regression therapy, behavioral compliance sessions. Some notes ended with "subject transferred to long-term containment after non-compliance." No names, just numbers. Next came foundation memos. Many bore George Smith's digital signature. Patient DV remains a threat to reputation. Continued confinement and status quo recommended. Possible media exposure in 2008, flagged, addressed. Rothman internal report suggests breach. Monitor and escalate. Jane's name. They knew she was investigating. They watched her. They let her get close, then they erased her. My hands shook as I opened the folder labeled Dr. BK Private Videos. Dozens of them. No titles, just dates. I clicked on one from 2005. A dark room. A woman tied to a chair, her speech slurred. A man off-screen asking calm, pointed questions. Do you believe we're here to hurt you, Dora? A familiar voice, cold, soft. Kellner. No, she murmured. You helping me forget. I slammed the lid shut. This wasn't therapy, this was programming. I had to act fast. I reached out to every independent journalist I could find. Reddit threads, anonymous leak forms. I even sent the entire contents of the drive to a disposable email address linked to a podcast I once heard about whistleblowers. Most didn't respond, but one name caught my eye. Lisa Morrison, a former investigative reporter who had been fired years ago for investigating a story about unethical psychiatric treatment in state institutions. Rumor had it she was still investigating, even if she was under the radar. I texted her, I have evidence of state-sanctioned experiments on women. I have names, videos, and I think a girl named Jane Gordon tried to contact you once. She disappeared. Please help me. I expected silence, but an hour later she replied, Where are you? I've been waiting for this for 15 years. Lisa Morrison didn't live in a city. She lived in a small cabin at the end of the world, 3 hours from the nearest Starbucks and buried under pine trees as thick as secrets. Her voice on the phone had been low, direct. No names, no license plates. Leave your cell phone in the glove compartment. I'll meet you outside. I followed every instruction. When I arrived, she was already waiting on the porch. Early 50s, piercing eyes, wind-beaten skin. She didn't smile. Inside, she moved quickly. No welcome, no tea, just locked the door, picked up a dusty laptop, and said, Show me. I handed her the flash drive. No reaction as she scrolled through the files, just a slow, deliberate breath when she saw the name Jane Gordon. She called me once, Lisa murmured. Told me she was scared, told me she thought she was being followed. I offered to find her, and she disappeared before we could. She paused, looked at me. You're not just risking your life, you're going to war. These people think they've already won. I know, I said, but I'm not backing down. She opened one of the memos and nodded. These are real. The language, the headings. This is how the Foundation writes. You couldn't fake this. Then she clicked on the videos, watched quietly, her jaw set and firm. This is going to go public. Someone gets burned, she said finally, but we have to be smart. One wrong move and you're gone like Jane, or worse, like Dora, alive but buried. She leaned closer, her voice a whisper. We need to make this too big for them to contain. We go to trusted allies, former prosecutors, whistleblower networks, and when we release it everywhere at once. I nodded, but deep down I knew we weren't just fighting for the truth. We were fighting for Dora, for Jane, and for what was left of my own stolen life. Lisa acted fast. Within 24 hours, the flash drive had been duplicated 6 times and sent to 6 people across the country. Former prosecutors, human rights lawyers, 2 podcasters, and an underground whistleblower platform. Each person was given a separate password to unlock it, delivered via encrypted phone calls. This is how you kill a monster, Lisa said. Starve him of secrecy. Meanwhile, she wrote a comprehensive report to accompany the evidence, tying it all together. She worked through the night. I barely slept, but the next morning I woke to a voicemail. It was from him, George Smith. His voice was steady, calm, as it always had been, controlled, as if he were already deciding what would come next. Rachel, I know what you've been doing. I want to talk. You owe me this. I stared at the phone, my stomach churning. I didn't owe him anything. Lisa looked up from her laptop. Don't go. But I had to go. I had to look him in the eye one last time. We met in a public place, an old, half-abandoned train station. Cameras, witnesses. I kept my distance. He wore his usual beige coat and fatherly smile, as if nothing had changed. You've become a smart girl, he said. Haven't you? I said. Don't pretend you raised me out of love. His face faltered. Do you think this was simple? Do you think I wanted this? No, I said. I think you wanted control. He paused, then gave a small shake of his head. Everything you found is dangerous. Not just for me, for you, for Dora. If you go public, people will get hurt. I know, I said, my eyes fixed on his, and they already have. He stepped closer. This doesn't have to end badly. You still have time to stop it. I didn't move. Then I said softly, it's already out there. He went still. His face changed, the calm draining away to reveal something colder. This will destroy you two, he said. No, I whispered. This will free me. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. The news broke 2 days later. It started with a podcast episode, raw, unfiltered audio from the videos I had recovered. Then came the articles, the documents, the scans of falsified patient files, whistleblower testimonies, an anonymous expose on Jane Gordon, naming names. And then the video of Dora in that room, her voice slurred, her eyes vacant. People watched. People listened. By the end of the week, Serene Psychiatric was trending. Within 10 days, the state attorney general announced a formal investigation. Subpoenas were issued. George Smith's name appeared alongside Brian Kellener's and 3 others in a class action lawsuit filed by families of former patients. I didn't expect the world to care, but it did. I kept my real mother safe hidden while the media frenzy grew, but my thoughts never left Horizon Care Center. I had to get her out. The next morning, I made a call and made arrangements with Nurse Nora. Horizon Care Center couldn't hold out. After the leak, the staff was scared, uncertain. Some had already left. Nora met me at the door and handed me a clipboard. She's been quietly sedated, but she's still lucid. You need to hurry. I found Donna in the same chair by the window. Mom, I whispered, kneeling down. We're leaving. Dora's eyes were glazed, but her hand moved slowly but surely. She touched my cheek. You found me. I always would, she said. Tears welled up. No matter what they did. We walked out together. No alarms, no men in white, just the twilight and the wind. The next few weeks were a blur. Legal protection, medical care, trauma therapy, Dora's reintroduction to a world that had forgotten her. And the trial, postponed, delayed, but not dismissed. George Smith never called again. He was indicted 3 months later. And Jane? I kept investigating. I wouldn't give up. 6 months after the whole thing happened, a woman was found living under an assumed name in a small town in Oregon. Nervous, reserved, but alive. It was Jane Gordon. So I flew to find her. We talked for hours, not about what was lost, but about what we would build together. Rachel went through ups and downs and great discoveries, but she didn't give up on finding the truth and freeing her mother. What would you have done if you were in her situation? Tell us in the comments. If you liked this story, please like the video and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories.